And I know so many people who threw up this objection. Eventually, I convinced them. They niched down and started finding traction, and they had more energy and excitement than I'd ever seen in them before. Because they're like, holy crap, something's finally working. And just because they're constrained by like doing a certain type of work or service, they couldn't care less. They are literally like pumped to actually be seeing some results on their labor. So that would be my my answer.
Would you rather feel bored or constantly defeated?
Yeah, literally, that is kind of what it comes down to. If it's not working and it hasn't worked for years, like try something new and remember, it's not a life sentence.
The Perspective Podcast is fuel for your mind and creative grind. Each week, my guests and I provide the skills for thinking bigger, overcoming adversity, and making an impact with your work. PC family, today we're back for round 2 of another heavy-hitting dose of creative marketing knowledge from expert and brother from another mother, my homie, Tom Ross. Tom, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm fantastic, Scotty. It's good to see you again, and thank you for having me back on. It's an honor, number 2 on the podcast.
Number 2, yeah, because we got down like last year. It would have been episode 119. And let me tell you the brief overview for people who want to go. Perspective-Collective 119. And we talk about removing the sleaziness from your marketing, growing a loyal tribe by listening and serving, being authentic and treating people like they're more than numbers, holistic tips, and clutch hacks for boosting engagement. There's a lot of shit baked into that one.
Yeah, damn. I couldn't even remember half that stuff we talked about.
I know, man. Things have massively progressed. And I'm pretty much a walking testimonial for like the consulting and the services and the stuff that you preach. Like, I'm here to say this shit does work. And, you know, I want to bring you on today. We're going deep. Like, I don't think I've had a true episode yet that's just gone deep on one topic. So this is the first. And this topic is something that has changed my life after being someone who was so resistant against the power of niching down. You know, I was too afraid of being pigeonholed. And I think you deal with creatives all the time, especially with me, and niching down has like changed my life. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But for those who want to know more about your background, go back to episode 119. Give us the super skinny Wikipedia page summary so we can just dive right in. Zero fluff today.
I love it. Although, give me 10 seconds of fluff just to say, you got the best listeners, man. Because when we did that first episode, so many reached out and DM me and were like the nicest people. So shout out to your listeners. They're a great bunch.
When they get value, that's why we cut out the fluff, you know, so like people like just get lit up and fueled for this. It's creative fuel for your mind and grind. You know, it's more than just like, hey, what are your rates? You know, or let me create like a really, really good piece in Procreate. It's more than that.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
So give us that Wikipedia page summary real quick.
About me or
about you, and they can go back deeper about you in episode 119.
All right, let's do it. So I've been a long time creative designer and entrepreneur. I just grew up loving all three. And so from the age of 12, I've been dabbling in Photoshop, Paint Shop Pro back in the day, if you're as old as we are. And I've just been building websites, creating projects from that young age and loving it, doing it for fun. Lucky enough to have turned that into a living. So I've had all kinds of ventures over the years. I ran like a big Photoshop blog. I've helped hundreds of people, had a fairly successful freelance career. All of that led me to running designcuts.com, which is my baby. That's been going 6 years, and it's the highest quality, most curated marketplace in the world for designers, where you can get everything cheaper than anywhere else, basically as well. So people tend to enjoy that. And that's it, man. Like I just, I'm really passionate about this stuff to the point my hobby, I'm such a geek, is I help people generally for free with this outside the day job. Just tons of people I talk to every week, including you over the last few years. We're the same, right? We could just talk about this stuff till the cows come home. Mm-hmm. So like, you like something when you finish doing it for your day job and go home and find time to fit it in instead of watching TV.
True. Well, and not to mention, you're the co-host, Honest Designers Podcast. You have the Honest Entrepreneur personal brand, and now you have a third podcast real quick you want to tell people about?
Yeah, so we're dropping it this month, actually. It's called Biz Buds with Michael Janda. And so each one kind of brings something different, but that's going to be like deeply geeking out when it comes to business. I think some of the others are more like, creative mindset and stuff. This is like two entrepreneurs sitting down and being like, here's how you actually do it.
Okay, that's what I need. So consider me locked in. And I need to dive into that dude's content anyway. But today, this is about you and the power of niching down. And this is what radically changed me. So like real quick in the backdrop. So you and I connected last year through Diane Gibbs, and a million other people are just like, hey, you should talk to Tom, or hey, you should talk to Scotty. And finally we linked up, hit it off right away because we both have a passion for serving and empowering creatives, especially like me is more of like the life coach side, but yours is more of like that marketing and business side. And I like to jump into those buckets as well. But you really helped me embrace something that made me super uncomfortable in becoming a side hustle coach. And that the imposter syndrome, I think, is what really held me back. Because years ago, I tried calling myself a creative coach when I was at Creative South. And like, I just didn't believe it. I didn't embrace it. It felt gross. And the imposter syndrome. So like when I posted photos of like me at that talk, I edited out, photoshopped out creative coach, and I put in like illustrative lettering. You know, it's still on my like Facebook profile, so you can see it. And you really helped me break that barrier, because I'm a true believer. If you put something out into the world and you truly believe it, the rest of the world's going to align with your beliefs. And you've helped me become the side hustle coach. So I want people to think like, don't think of Scotty.D.Russell, you think of side hustle. When you think of side hustles, you think of Scotty.D.Russell. And that's like powerful brain space to own. So
yeah, like I remember speaking with you and hearing a lot of resistance to niching. And it was like a fraction of what you were doing or of your brand. You were like, and I kind of, help people with their side hustle, but it definitely wasn't the whole thing. But the more you talked, I was like, you keep coming back to this side hustle thing. I was like, why don't you just become the creative side hustle guy?
Like everybody's asking me questions like, hey, how do you make time for this? How do you find the energy and motivation to do this outside the day job? How do you have to do this outside of a family? How do you do a podcast and freelance? I'm like, all right, honestly, it makes sense. So
there's a demand there.
Yeah, there was a huge demand. And now I do this full-time coaching, like, which is crazy. I wouldn't be able to do this full-time had it not been for you. And that's like my walking testimonial. And I think that's the power of this today. And we have some objections, we have some rebuttals, but I think you just have a ton of killer advice. And at the end of it, it's like this guide that you've been putting out too. I want to make sure we give a heavy plug to that to drive people to it so they can see the power as well. But first off, like, why should someone niche down? Niche down, whatever someone wants to say. It's niche in my area. It could be niche wherever.
I'm going with niche as the European.
I'm kicking it with niche in this Iowa territory. I'm staking claim on.
We cover all bases.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I am such a believer in niching. I really think, like, out of everything I share and teach, this is probably the thing I come back to the most that has the most impact for people. And I know it has with you and so many others that I work with. So I think if you are not niching, you are inherently a generalist. And if you're a generalist, you're quite often trying to speak to everyone, which ultimately means you're speaking to no one. I say this all the time. If you're trying to talk to everyone, you kind of render yourself invisible. And from a marketing and business perspective, that is not a good place to be. And I've been there. Like when I was younger, I was like a freelance designer who was doing any type of work for anyone who would pay me and anyone who cared. I'd be making content like anyone who's going to pay attention. I was so unfocused. And so not only is it not good financially to be that scattergunned, but like mentally, you just feel really unclear.
And I know from my experience, you're guessing what to post a lot. And I'm thinking and immediately I want to throw an objection here of like, when you're just starting off and you're trying to just figure out your groove and your style, like, do you think it's important for like people who are just pursuing their creativity or just in the early stages of their side hustle? Like maybe they want to try design, but maybe it's like lettering or maybe it's watercolor, something else. Like how important is it to niche down in the beginning? Or do you have that exploratory phase? Like I think of things from my experience in phases of like, here's a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And stage 1 is so exploratory, experimental, and you got to find what like speaks to you, your passion, your strengths, your interests, your values, beliefs. I call that the sweet spot in the beginning. Like what's your thoughts of true beginners? Because you and I really specialize with people who like aren't necessarily starting, but they're looking for that next step. And that's where niching really came into play. Like what's your thoughts on beginners?
Yeah, that is a great question. Personally, the way I have always worked is the same way I listen to music. So I will get to like a band or a song and I'll put that on repeat. I'll keep listening to it until I'm kind of sick of it. And so I commit very fully. And I actually advocate people should do that with niching. even if they're more of a beginner, just realize that niching is not a life sentence. It's a choice, and you can pivot and change that and adjust that anytime. And you probably should be, you know, you're really not signing up for a life sentence here. So I think it is impossible to figure out if a niche is for you, or if it's viable, or if it's working, if you've got like a toe in the water. I say jump in, you know, have a hypothesis. Like, I think I could enjoy this niche. I think it could be viable. It could let me run a good business. But then jump in with both feet, really taste it, really try it. And guess what? Like, if you're bored of it, or it's not what you thought it was after 3 months, 6 months, whatever, try something else. And that's fine. That's the same as like developing your style, right? When it comes to work. But you're not going to say, oh, I like to draw using marker pens, but I'm only going to do it like twice a year. You're not going to learn if you like it. But if you spend 2 months doing nothing but doodling and drawing with marker pens, then you get a better idea if you're actually into that thing or not.
I think it's great. Biggest takeaway right there. Niching, whatever. It's not a life sentence. People feel so overwhelmed. Like the whole side hustle coach thing for me last year. I'm like, but what if I don't want to do this 3 years from now? Well, shit, dude, you don't
do something else.
You know, and I really, the people, the students that I work with, I love that it's not a life sentence part. But I usually call it, you're just going deep for a season. You know, instead of dipping those toes, it's diving deep just for a season. And that season, like with my students in the program, it's 3 months going all out, because you can make a ton of some other people it's a year, some other people it's 100-day lettering project, whatever. So like a season, what's the minimum do you think a season should be, just in your personal opinion?
Personal experience, I think 3 months, if it's really all out,
and
is
something
like
you're passionate
very
about.
Yeah, like 3 months for a sprint, absolutely.
Sprints.
Look at Melinda Livesey, right? She went all in on brand strategy for 6 months, and that has changed her life. She could have got to the end.
Connecting me with her. She'll be on the podcast here in a couple of months.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Melinda's great, but she fully immersed herself in brand strategy. At the end of 6 months, she could have been like, you know what? I've learned a lot. I can take those skills and knowledge and apply it to future stuff, which is a real valid point, by the way. Don't feel like you're wasting 3 to 6 months. You can apply that shit in future.
You're mastering the baseline and the fundamentals of how to show up regularly, consistency, time management. It's like all that fundamentals you can carry to the next season or sprint.
Exactly. So for me, 3 to 6 months, I would say. But you don't need to think, okay, I got to do this thing for 1 to 3 years to get any clue of if I actually like it and if it's viable. I think just give it a proper taste.
That's overwhelming at the same time, thinking you have to like go that deep for that long. You know, that feels like a life sentence.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at school, quite often I would use the summer holidays, because back then it's ridiculous. We got like 12 weeks off. Imagine that now as an adult and a family man, just 3 months of nothing. So I would use three months, and I would quite often build something over summer. And that's how I launched my Photoshop blog. I put out a Photoshop tutorial every single day for like the first few months of my blog, and it really took off. And I continued that blog and turned it into something, but equally I could have pivoted and just given it up and kind of learned some stuff along the way. And I've done this so many times, guys. I didn't just fall into like my perfect niche, not with freelancing, not with entrepreneurial stuff. I have done like photo manipulation. I've done blogging. I've done like building and trying to flip websites, and I freaking hated that, but I tasted it and I tried it enough. I actually did it. I didn't view it from afar to ascertain if it was a good fit for me. I actually tried it.
I think that's great. Just like showing your back history, because mine's similar. I was kind of niching down without knowing I was doing it with certain things, but then being more specific. So today, what would you say like your niche that you own is, the big bucket that you play in?
Yeah, well, I've got my personal brand. So my personal brand is coaching and helping creatives to master their marketing.
That's a positioning statement, folks.
And then my company is obviously like the day job's founder and CEO of my company. So that is wearing all the hats that a CEO tends to wear. And I love both. Like both are super fun, but man, back to my point a second ago, like there are so many times I had like a 3 or 6 or 12 month niching experiment sprint, and I used that stuff today. Literally, like even outside of my work, I've had sprints where I've learned like video editing and made videos with my friends when I was a teenager. And I'm now able to better direct a video ad for our company in-house because I actually know a bit about editing and like cinematography, because I kind of dabbled in that for a year when I was 17. Am I an expert? Absolutely not. But I think if you actually dabble in something for 3 to 12 months and really commit, you instantly become better than like 95% of the general public. You have some clue about it.
For sure. It gives you just a new tool in your tool belt to leverage. It may not be your go-to tool or medium or choice, whatever, but exactly. And it's the same thing with like your jobs. Every job you've been to, whether it's shitty or not, there's something that a tool you can leverage. I call it stealing from your day job. Like, what are those tools you can steal and leverage for your dream job? That's what I like to teach.
Love that.
Yeah. Like I stole all the time, all the time in a good way. But that's like
one of those. Not like office stationery or something like that.
No, not like stealing
filling your pockets.
I'm feeling stolen a pack of batteries and some staples today. No, it's just, it's one of those catchy BuzzFeed headlines. But some other values like of niching down makes you a specialist. You talk about. I know there's an Instagram post you talk about as well, kind of outlining these. I'll let you go deeper on those.
Yeah, 100%. So do you want me to kind of fire through these, or should we go deep?
Fire through them. And if I feel one that I think we should speak on a little bit more, we'll pause and jump into it.
All right, let's do it. So one of the biggest ones is, by definition, when you niche, you have less competition. When you're a generalist, you're competing with all the other generalists, and in some cases, people that have niched, and you're kind of overlapping with them. When you niche down, you are generally serving a smaller market. And so there are less people to compete with. And a great example of this is Becca Clarkson, right? She's in this guide I'm putting together because she's done it so beautifully. The hand-lettered niche is ridiculously gigantic.
Saturated.
Like competing with millions of people. So what she's done is she's mainly specialized and niche down into food lettering, but also within that, she kind of does stop motion animation and all this cool stuff. And that has led to huge success for her, right? She's had some enormous clients. She stands out in my mind, and I'm sure yours, someone that does things very differently.
Tactile lettering for sure.
Right? It really stands out. Like, she's not just another person doing like positive affirmations or brush lettering or something like that. So she is drastically, like, there's probably like, I can count on both hands the notable people that actually she might consider competitors. There's not many of them. There's certainly not like a million, like most letterers have to encounter. And that makes your life so much easier, because we've all felt it when we've been in these more generalized spaces and these gigantic markets. It's really overwhelming. You feel like you're drowning. You can't get your head above the water. You're just trying to break through any way you can and trying to stand out. And it's seriously like super, super difficult. And I actually experienced this. So when I started my personal brand, I was trying to teach entrepreneurship in general to all entrepreneurs. And that's really quite hard. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and I built a decent sized business, but I realized every entrepreneur was trying to become a teacher, and there were some huge names I was up against. So what I did was I actually niched into teaching entrepreneurship and marketing for creatives. And suddenly my competition goes from being like tens of millions of people and like Gary Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin and Tim Ferriss and all these people. Suddenly my competition is like Mike Janda and Chris Do and stuff. And it's like, well, I built a similar scale business to those guys and their friends. And, suddenly I feel kind of, like I can actually be, to my next point, I can be a specialist. I can be a specialist because I'm serving a smaller market, and there's less kind of big players that I have to compete with. So it's easier to kind of claw my way to the top. And that is such a valid point, Suddenly you become someone who's a little bit like higher up the food chain, or however you want to think about it. We all want to be regarded as an authority in our niche, right? You don't want to be regarded as the beginner or someone that's not trustworthy. You want to try and break through and get trusted. And to give you a pretty random example, Scotty, have you seen the film Idiocracy with Luke Wilson?
No.
So the premise is Luke Wilson's the main protagonist. He lives in a world where he gets like frozen in a chamber or something, and he wakes up hundreds of years later. And there's been a kind of de-evolution where everyone has become significantly dumber. So the average IQ is like incredibly low, and he wakes up suddenly, wonders where he is, and he's the smartest man in the world. He's got by far the highest IQ. So he's like a genius by a long, long stretch. And the point is, he has not changed. It's just his environment and his market that's changed. So suddenly he becomes trusted. He becomes this genius authority figure. And that's just because he shifted his environment and his market. And you can actually do the same thing. And it's completely in your control because it's simply a choice. No one's pigeonholing you into anything. We actually get to choose our niche. You know how cool that is? We can be like, yeah, I'll take that one over there. I'm going to be a big fish in that smaller pond over there. Nothing wrong with that.
And I think like actionable steps right now, when someone just has surface level in their Instagram profile, like I'm a letterer, I'm a muralist, I'm an illustrator, like that's so surface level and safe and not specific. And I say this because that was me, but like, what kind of lettering do you do? You know, again, it's so saturated. What kind of illustrations do you do? What's your medium? What's your focus? I chatted with a student recently. He was an illustrator, but no, he's more of a visual storyteller who illustrates comic books in the sci-fi realm. I'm like, now that's specific. I'm like, I helped him drill it down by just like, what's your buckets of interest? What are you passionate about? What are your values or beliefs? Or where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, who's your dream client? And like, they all just connected. I'm like, well, I feel you're more along this route, you know, hella specific instead of getting washed away in the sea of noise. So
I love that. And I got a few examples we can get to later in this episode of people who are doing it. Because I can already hear some of the listeners maybe thinking, well, these really specific things, surely there's no money in it or the market's not big enough. You would be surprised. So we can definitely get into that in a bit in terms of like the gold mines that actually lie in some of these micro niches. But okay. Speaking of money, man, like if you are more of a specialist in a smaller market, you can often charge more.
This
is a great side effect.
I just learned about the power of this last year. Like I started off with my coaching calls right before you and I linked up. I was like, I really want to pursue coaching. It scares me. So that means like, this is the next step of what I need to pursue. I use that as my impulse. And I sent out 5 sessions. I put out 5 sessions live within 10 minutes, all for $100, sold them within 10 minutes, all 5 sessions. And I was like, okay, there's something here. But like, I just called myself a creative coach, but then you helped me really blow it up and speak to the need of like what I knew people wanted, but I didn't know how to own it. And now, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this full time and replace my day job income.
And I love how you've executed that. And that's a perfect case example, because if someone's asking me about, I need to learn how to do the side hustle thing, you are literally the best person I can recommend. You're at the top of that niche in my mind. So if it was, I want to learn business in general, well, there's probably 100 people I could recommend. And when there's a lot of competition, generally it is harder to charge a higher rate. It's just basic supply and demand. But when you're kind of dominating your niche, you can command a higher price.
And it's truly, and I always felt like I didn't know much, but it's like I know more than other people who haven't been doing this for almost 6 years. And I truly just speak to what I know, which is how to build profitable, passionate, and fulfilling side hustles outside your day job and life responsibilities. Like that's all I know. So that's what I'm doing.
That doesn't matter though. Like I talked about this recently. I know so little about so little. Being straight up, I'm so all in on what I love. I can talk about that forever. I live and breathe it. I love it. But man, get me down like a pub quiz. I've got the general knowledge of a 5-year-old sometimes. Like I'm terrible with like geography, history. I don't retain it because day in, day out, I'm just like a sponge for all the stuff I really care about. And there's no room in my head for anything else. So,
and that's good. And so many people try to fake it. Like teach what you know, teach what you're passionate about instead of like fake. I think you might've put something else out there too of like,
yeah, I did.
People just like faking, just trying to like keep up with the Joneses and stuff. And I think that's the beauty of niching down. So
yeah, like there's nothing wrong with being a specialist and there's nothing wrong with admitting what you don't know. Like I get it all the time. Other day, someone asked me about ads on LinkedIn. I was like, I have no idea. I've never run one. Like I'm not going to regurgitate someone else's advice around it because the truth is I don't know.
Advice. That's what it was. It was. So let's pivot to the next section of like how to niche down then.
Okay. Have I got 2 secs for a couple more quick points on why? Because I really want to sell people on this.
You have 2 secs.
Okay. So, all right. As we mentioned, when you're the specialist in a smaller market, you actually come first to mind. And I don't want to downplay the importance of this. It is huge. Massive. If someone is saying, I need X, you might not be the person offering it, but you might have a friend. So as I say, if someone says, I'm doing a side hustle thing, they don't even finish their sentence before I'm like, check out Scotty.D.Russell. check out my buddy Scotty, like that. And I have that for all kinds of stuff. And guess what? If you're not focused, if you're not niched, if you're offering everything for everyone, you're never going to spring to someone's mind when they need something.
It's like you're on page 20 of Google search.
Yeah, exactly that. And so this is kind of linked in with like marketing and branding yourself with confidence. It's fully committing, saying like, I am all about this thing. Like you, I am the side hustle guy. That's so powerful, because that's when you do start to spring to people's mind. When they're doing a side hustle, they think of you, as opposed to like, I'm the guy who's kind of doing a bit of everything. What do you spring to mind for? Like nothing. So
and
that is super powerful.
Barely anything, and you get stuck in that bottom feeding. Well, this person told me they would charge me this. Okay, well, I'll lower my rate because I really desperately need this project right now.
Yeah, exactly that. And so my final point on like why you should niche is also it lets you focus in finding and serving your ideal audience. And this is huge, because if I said to you, Scotty, who are you serving? And you're like, I don't know, anyone who will pay me, like everyone in the world kind of thing. You know, you're super general. I'd be like, okay, where are you going to find those people? How are you going to reach everyone in the world with your services? Completely overwhelming. You're lost. You don't know where to start. But if I said, you know, what kind of work are you doing? Who are you trying to reach? And you go, I'm doing website design for every restaurant within a 20-mile radius of my house. You could literally look them up and systematically go and pitch every restaurant in the 20-mile radius within like a week. You can be so focused. You literally know where your ideal people are based, like how to reach them, how to approach them, how to talk their language. You can market with confidence. You can market in a more focused way. And I've seen this time and time again. People, quite often, it's not that they suck at marketing. They just don't know where to start. But when they actually focus and they niche, suddenly it starts to click. And they're like, oh, I actually have some idea of who the hell I'm speaking to with my copy now. And where, what they're all about. It is like, you feel powerful when you start doing it.
And I my personal experience is niching down for me in this direction. I don't guess anymore. Constraints breed creativity. I'm a firm believer in that. And these constraints have clarity. The biggest thing is clarity. I know exactly what I'm doing each day. I know who I'm talking to. It gives me more confidence in it too, because this is the territory I own. I am an expert in this field, and that made me feel weird. But if I can do this to make it full time now, like clearly I know what's going on here. So, but clarity, confidence, direction. A lot of people are spinning their wheels each day, making minimal progress in a million directions. Hence, they don't have a focus. So having that focus as well, I think we're selling it here pretty good. All right. Like we'll get to the objections here in a little bit. Sold. Cool. We'll get to the objections here in a little bit, because I think they're valid, but at the same time, like I think we can squash them. So, but how to niche then? How does someone niche down? So we've talked about the value of it, but like, what's the next step?
Cool. So there's several ways to niche, and quite often you can actually combine a few of them together and get like super niched. So the first one is your skill or service that you're offering. And so think about it. Could you be a designer, or could you be a logo designer, or a web designer, or a mural artist, or a hand letterer, et cetera, et cetera? And as we said before, hand lettering is obviously still pretty saturated, but at least that's more focused than like when you go on someone's Instagram feed, for example, and it's like one day it's a bit of lettering, the next day it's like a print design. We've all been there. Like I did that in my early stage design career, right? For clients, it was like, okay, I'll do a restaurant menu, and then a website, and then like some photo work.
It's like mixed in there.
Anything you need. So I think a great start is actually just trying to think, what skill am I particularly good at? And what do I really enjoy? And where do I seem to kind of find the most traction? Those are the questions you need to start asking yourself. And if you're doing 5 to 10 things, for example, it's like, well, just creep it in the right direction. If you don't want to pick one, pick 3. Just start trying to focus down. Start trying to drop the stuff where maybe you don't enjoy it so much. You're not so good. You don't get such a good reaction when you show people that kind of work.
Okay. Yeah. What about kind of the next phase there? I guess I want to add to that too, like via service. Again, it comes back to like what I teach is like finding that sweet spot. And you talked about like those buckets of interest. I really put it in the 2 buckets of your secret sauce is like what you're passionate, something that you're just good at. It lights you up, keeps you up at night. You just get lost in the sauce for hours. And then the other bucket is like your strengths, what you're talking about, what you're good at, what comes naturally to you. What do other people tell you you're good at that they're like, wow, I wish I could do that, but all I can do is draw stick figures. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm kind of good at drawing. You're just too close to it. So And then those buckets of like interests, values, and beliefs. I think those kind of all tie in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. And Seth Godin talks about your unfair advantage. And so what is something where you're so kind of weirdly, freakishly good at it that people generally can't compete? And this doesn't even have to be a whole thing, but it's generally quite a good barometer for like guiding you what you should be focusing on. And we all have them. I got some weird stuff where it's like, I guess I've done it for long enough, or I'm just naturally good enough at it, where I know I can like really outperform other people with it and really have a great impact. And I know you do as well.
Mine would be like, if I have too much vodka, then I can get into like this freestyle rapping mode about pizza and puns and all kinds of stuff. So I'd say like that's like a weird superpower I have, that poetic wordplay. But let's dive.
Okay, now, we already know we have to meet up in real life. Now we have to.
Oh, I will surprise you. I will surprise you.
I might I might have dropped this last time I was on. My go-to karaoke song is "Ain't Nothing But a G Thing" by Snoop Dogg. So I think we know what's happening.
Give me the instrumental and a couple like heavy vodkas, and let's get it. Some double Tito's or something.
Yeah, man.
So we got via service. Okay, I know next you talk about like client and the customer industry.
All right, so it's a little step before that actually. Point number 2 is style and positioning. And this is something I've been thinking on even more lately. This is once you've kind of found your service or your thing, how can you niche down further within that by differentiating yourself? And a great example of that, I think, is Lauren Hom, who's a mutual friend of ours. And Lauren, I guess this was quite intentional, but she was in that early wave of letterers and I think noticed it getting very crowded. So the lettering space is like teeming with people. It's getting increasingly busy and saturated. And so what she did was super smart. She started expressing her character more than ever and started doing these quotes that were like sassy and quirky and funny and
sassy,
very Lauren.
Sassy but gassy is one.
Exactly, right?
Lauren, you know I love that one.
I love that one too. And we talked about this with her when she came on one of my podcasts, The Honest Designers Show. I think she actually got our longest episode ever, which was nuts. We just could talk to her forever. Lauren's so fantastic. But she is a living proof of this, right? Because while everyone else is staying super generic with their messaging and their style, she just goes off on this tangent and it's like, boom, instant niche. And we see this over and over again. And the example I gave earlier, I know we're kind of sticking with lettering here, but Becca Claassen, the food lettering work which she does is amazing. Or James Lewis with his crazy like pop off the page 3D lettering. And so whatever space you're in, it doesn't have to be lettering, but you can find these little quirky angles. I guess it's kind of your style as you develop that, is like really lean into that, because that is a way to differentiate and niche and stand out within your kind of niche skill or service.
I call that, this is a formula I started seeing, and I call it doing something familiar in an unfamiliar way. And the people who are absolutely crushing it are the ones who are owning this approach, and they found their style, their voice, and their medium, but they're doing something familiar. And James is always like the first person that comes to mind of doing like these crazy brand logos, but he's doing it in an unfamiliar way. Like, so this is, everybody knows like the Coca-Cola logo, but then when James does the Coca-Cola logo, he does it in this 3D pop off cast shadow, as well as bringing in knowing that video is content king right now, you know, and then showing the process. He's hitting those buckets of educational value, entertainment, as well as inspiring, because they tell a story. Like, he is creating the holy grail of content by owning those 3 buckets, doing something familiar in an unfamiliar way. Like, he's got this formula locked down. I think like Stefan Kuhns has it locked down, Lauren. So like, that's Ian, what I see. Ian Barnard. Yeah. So those are like, that's the true formula, and people niche down within it. Yeah.
And I love that. Did you see James is on TikTok now?
Yep. Oh, I just joined it recently, and he's blowing up. I'm just like,
I don't know what he got, like 200 million views on one video or something nuts. Like, it's like insane.
But he deserves it, man. It's been incredible to watch his journey like just blow up as well. So it's fun. All these people we talk about have been on the show, you know?
Yeah.
That means we know like good people, you know, we know good people.
They're great examples. So, you know, if any of this feels impossible, these people have done it. And I actually tweeted about this earlier today. This is kind of a side note, but I think don't look at these people and feel intimidated. The biggest thing I can recommend doing is go back in time to the start of their feed and check out what they were doing and try and reverse engineer it, because you're never going to look at someone step 50 and you're on step 2 and feel like completely inspired without that being daunting. So go back to their step 2 and work out how they got to step 5.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't
That's the
compare
way to do
your
it.
beginning to someone else's middle, you know?
No way. Yeah. And I love doing that. We turned that into a mini series at one point where we literally got these people to talk us through their feed from day one to where they're at now. Cause I'm like, I'm so sick of people, you know, messaging, just saying it's super intimidating. It's like, well, it is if you're looking at these superstars. It's like, go look at when they had no followers and they were like finding their style. That's what inspires me.
I keep all my turds. I call it posting turds in the beginning. I still post turds, you know, stuff that isn't like perfect.
I saw that.
Yeah,
that piece.
It's like one of the best, most engaged things I've had. And I'm like, dude, it's just something that spawned from the first coaching program with someone. But it's like, you got to post the turds. You got to show to grow. And like, I still post turds. I don't love, but there's a fine line between perfectionism and procrastination, you know, and you're never going to be perfect. So you got to post to grow. And you can, do the backtrack, reverse engineer my account, your account, like yours, especially last year to where it is now. Like you're an example.
Yeah. And when people are like, oh, how come you're fairly confident and comfortable on video now? Go back on my Instagram. I did a series called Daily Tom, where I shoved the camera in my face and did a first take video and put out whatever I was thinking that day. I did that for months. It's like, you start to get more comfortable when you do that kind of stuff.
Like, and I jumped on when I had like a first speaking gig or something coming up. Like I jumped on like Snapchat before they added the story. So I was on Snapchat for a while, and I'd force myself each day to just get on camera and just talk. Hella uncomfortable. Barely anybody watched, but it's like just forcing yourself to do that. It just normalizes it and becomes routine. And then you get to show that personal human outside your personal brand, because people aren't going to just hire you because of your dope work. I mean, they might, but people are going to hire you because of you. People are going to follow you because of you.
Yeah. And I'm such a believer in like expressing that true vulnerable side of yourself. I actually think as well, have you found this where if you don't do it as frequently, you lose it a little bit? It's like gains in the gym, because I'm coming off of like a long festive break right now. I'm getting back into the swing of things. At one point I was just jumping on calls and videos every day. I'm now here being like blinded like a deer in headlights by my filming lights. I feel a bit out of the groove in general. I'm like trying to ramp it back up for the new year. And funny enough, when you do it every single day, you're like, oh yeah, this is pretty easy actually.
Yeah, that's how side hustling is. The more you just make things routine, you just bake the next thing in, and this is just nothing. I don't have to think. I just do it. You know? So what else do you got for like how to niche down?
All right. So next up, we got industry. And this again can be a very powerful way. I've been working with all kinds of people in the last year who are doing this. I've got a friend who niched into the CBD and cannabis industry. And so suddenly the guy's hitting up like every CBD convention, landing clients left, right, and center, getting all kinds of traction.
Does he have like pretty high returns?
Oh, no, he didn't.
Not with the CBD, with the THC part. But sorry, that was horrible. Keep going.
I've enjoyed it. But you're a dad. You've got to get the dad jokes in.
Dude, I got them for days.
You don't get me started. I'm not even a dad yet. I like cringe my whole team out telling dad jokes.
Love it.
Conjunctivitis.com. That's a site for sore eyes.
Oh my God. Let's keep going, Tom.
All right. I won't do it to you.
They're leaving us right now.
Yeah, you got so many unsubscribes. Damn. All right, but industry. CBD is one, but there is infinite like industries, micro industries that you can target, and you can get very niche with this. So back in the day, I knew a guy who exclusively did web design. That's niching by a skill or service, and he did it exclusively for churches. Like that's pretty out there, right? So he carved out like
industry.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. You can cross these things over, and he did very well. You know, did super well in that space, but churches and websites. And so you'd be amazed, whatever like industry lights you up and you find super interesting, like check it out, because there's probably some money there.
So like quick example, like this is a weird thing of like crossing over industries as well as interests. Like for me, my most successful product ever was a coffee mug, combining my love for a cat floating in outer space, chasing down a pizza, and teaming up with Deneen Pottery in Minnesota for like hand created crafted mugs. Here's like one of them. Here's like the other one. I've been doing like a space owl design. It's just
that's
a whole
so
series
cool.
of like animals now, but it's like double glazed, dipped, created, all handmade. They made like runs of 400, 500. And like the first run we sold out 200 of them, but it hit all these different markets of pizza loving people who like outer space, people who love cats, and people who love coffee, and then telling a story behind it. It's like hits all those potential markets, and it was like our bestseller. But that's what you mean by crossovers.
Yeah, definitely. That thing is beautiful, by the way. I just rewatched all the Harry Potter movies. That would not look out of place like on a Hogwarts dining room table.
Shout out to Deneen Pottery. Just got to say it. But what else you got?
All right. So final one is via the client or customer profile. And this can be super important because within some of these industries, you can start thinking more, what is your ideal type of client? Are you targeting like high net worth individuals, bootstrap startups? The examples I got written down here are, do you want to sell to goth teenagers or retired tennis enthusiasts? I'm trying to think of like some weird stuff.
That's hilarious.
Like you can play with this stuff. And we're going to get into like elements of a viable niche, I think, in a second, where we can elaborate on this more. But by combining all of these things, suddenly it's like, okay, so you've got industry, you've got a skill or service that you can kind of hit these people with, you've got your unique style and positioning, and then within that industry, the type of people you actually want to be serving.
I like that recap right there. I like that recap. So then do you want to pivot and talk about like how to pick the right niche from there?
Yeah, let's do it, man. So that was 4 points. I got another 4 points for how to pick a viable niche.
Thanks for setting the expectations for those taking notes right now. Like, that's powerful.
Cool, man. So number one, you are passionate about the type of work that you're going to be doing. Like, that's it, right? Before you start picking your skill or your service, you have to actually like it, like we talked about before. Number two is the clients, customers, community can pay you enough to meet your financial goals. And I'll break that down in a second, where that can go very badly wrong, because it did for me in my previous freelance career. Number three, you understand and like these clients and customers that you're going to be serving, and you actually would enjoy working for them. Number four is you've got sufficient experience and credibility to reach and serve these people well. So that's the framework. Let me give a couple of examples of where this went pretty wrong for me. Like in the past, this is when I was a fair bit younger, I started trying to serve bands with my design work, and not like the Rolling Stones, like local bands that I was friends with and I knew. And so let's run this through the system. Number one, I was passionate about doing the work. It's pretty fun work. Number two, can they pay me enough? Hell no. Literally, I had a band of 4 people that could barely pay me £100 to do a website. Like they got £25 each, and that came out of their budget for like stuff they should have been reinvesting into the band. They were broke. Amateur bands, it turns out, don't really earn any money. So that was not financially viable. I liked the clients, a fair amount, although truthfully, they were kind of my people, but not like, I didn't love working with them. I just kind of liked it. And then number four, like, yeah, I felt pretty equipped to serve them well, and I could reach them pretty easily. So let's call that 2.5 out of 4 points, right? It would have been 3 if I like loved working with the people, but let's call it 2.5. And the whole point of this framework is, I don't think you should pick a niche unless it's got 4 out of 4. I don't think it's viable. Even if you got like 3.5 out of 4, I don't think that's the one for you. So I think you should aim for 4 out of 4. And to give you a hypothetical example, what about if I started targeting like huge Fortune 500 corporate companies? It's like, well, number one, hopefully be passionate about the type of work I was doing still. That wouldn't have changed. Number two, the money would be amazing. So that would be a huge tick. Number three, I probably wouldn't understand or like working with those people because I've never loved the whole like super corporate culture. I'd feel a bit like a fish out of water. And then number four, especially when I was younger, I would have actually struggled to have the credibility to reach some of these huge corporates. They probably work with like big agencies and stuff, and it would have been like little solo me trying to flog my websites. It wouldn't have played out. And so this is something I actually went through. I tried a bunch of different niches, not just the bands growing up. And it took me years and years, but through pivoting and trying and tasting, like we talked about before, I kept going and I found my viable niche. I found my 4 out of 4. And that's when everything freaking clicked. So eventually my niche was, I offered web design and more specifically like conversion services, and specifically within that redesigns. I wasn't just doing a website out of nothing. I would come along, you already had a website, I would redesign it with a conversion spin on things. And I did this for online entrepreneurs who were running these, you know, digital businesses, and they were generally solopreneurs. They didn't have big teams, but they were killing it. So they were earning more than 6 figures a year. And so they could pay me enough. You know, they believed in investing into their business, into marketing and design and stuff like that. Did I understand them? Hell yeah. I was an entrepreneur myself. So it was so easy for me to talk their language. I could geek out with them, talk about business all day. We got really fired up and passionate. I became friends with a bunch of my clients. And did I have credibility and expertise? Yeah, I did, because I knew what I was talking about and I really deeply understood their space. So they had some designers trying to pitch them who were great at design, but they didn't really understand online business. So I could kind of make that work. And that 4 out of 4 is where everything clicked. Suddenly it's like, I loved my clients. I loved the work. It had real impact. I was giving real value and I was earning more than I ever had. So that's like a kind of living proof of how this stuff can play out.
Man, that's living proof for like how my shit's playing out.
Yeah, you can feel it click, right? It's like the momentum kind of shifts into gear.
When you break it down in those buckets, you pretty much just summarized, you articulated everything of those buckets. I feel like I'm a player, like I'm a 4 out of 4 right now. And it took me,
and I could see you
5.5 years to get to that 4 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And that's fine. I don't want people to freak out at the prospect, because the point is, by trying to get there, you will edge closer and closer, you know, year on year. It's not an overnight thing. Nothing is. But guess what? If you're 1 out of 4 right now, and in a year's time, you're 2 out of 4, cool.
That's progress.
You know, you won't be a huge success probably, but you'll be doing better. You'll be a bit happier, a bit more focused.
I'm a big believer in like the theory and the concept. My philosophy is, if you just continue to show up and go all out in one direction that like hits that bucket, at least one that you're passionate about, the answers will reveal themselves in form of opportunities, in the form of relationships, like you last year for me. But I kept sticking with it, you know? And I kind of had a hint of the direction I wanted to go. I talk about like signs and omens, or like opportunities, or the form of people coming across your path. Like you were one of those things that came across my path that then helped me hit those other points. So, you know, stick with it in a direction, keep going all out, trying, tasting, pivoting, like you said, and the answers will reveal themselves.
I love what you just said about opening yourself up.
Be on a frequency to open up for things to come your way that you didn't expect. And that's how my life changed in 2019. And then I got shit on after getting fired, but it was like the best decision ever. It was the universe shoving me into this person I was supposed to become. But that's because I was open on a different frequency for opportunities to come my way I wasn't expecting, you know, and that's why I'm here today. And I think that's why I can help other people get there too.
Yeah. And people, and I've talked about this, like the universe kind of pushing you there. I actually think of it now about you just opening yourself up to the path of least resistance. It's kind of essentially going with the flow, because we get thousands of options presented to us every single day. And just by going like, you know what, my heart kind of leads me over there. That one looks cool. I'm going to check that out. And why don't I just try that? It worked the same for me, man. It's like, I didn't just wake up one day and be like, I have the perfect 4 out of 4 niche. I think that one came around because I joined an entrepreneurial message board forum because it was interesting to me. And then I knew I liked helping people. So I started helping people. And then I became an authority in that space and showed my credibility. So people started coming to me. And then I was open to working with them. And then I worked with them more. And before I knew it, I'd kind of fallen into this thing. It wasn't even like a deliberate strategic decision back then. I had no framework. I just opened myself up for like, well, that seems more interesting than that thing. So I'm going to, you know, go after column A over that.
And it's, I call it like, I'm big on like logic, your brain versus like gut, tuition, and your heart. And your gut, tuition, and heart are really those impulses like nudging you to like the next step you're supposed to be. So for me, or a lot of people, it's like, okay, art can't make you money. So the logic, fear-based scarcity mindset side is like, okay, so I have to chase design. And so for me, I didn't think the only way I could be successful is one, I quit art for the longest time so I could be a designer, you know, because that's where the money was. And also over the last couple of years, it's like, okay, so in order to be successful and do my thing full time, I feel like my brain's telling me I have to do freelance, but you know, my gut and intuition are saying like serve people, perspective podcast, and like coaching, and I didn't know I could make it a business, you know, but now it's like I kept chasing what I felt called to do versus like what felt safe. And that led me to these 4 points.
I love that. Yeah. Perfect example for people. It is possible. Like
It's totally possible. If you're sitting there right now and there's some shit you really, really, really are excited and want to do, but you don't see necessarily anybody else doing it. Like I didn't see anybody doing really what I'm doing. And you feel like you have to do freelance in order to be successful. I want to like stop you in your tracks and then hire me as your coach, because I can help you tap into that next shit, you know? So, you know, there is no one way of doing something, no one way, one perfect size fits all career path. Like you have the ability, the choice, like you were talking about, to blaze your own fucking path and your own creative career. And that shit is powerful, but you don't need a permission slip from me and Tom. It's like, you got to give yourself your own permission slip. We can believe you all day and cheer you on, be your cheerleaders, be in your corner, but you got to be your own big believer. And then the world's going to align itself to what you believe in, and like that label you define yourself and market to the world.
By the way, one of your unfair advantages is being motivational.
I have to say, I don't like
I always get
coach. Definitely not a motivational coach.
I know you're not, but that's your little like side unfair advantage, because whenever I talk to you, I feel pumped up and energized.
Good. I love that. That's what I want everybody to feel like when they leave a call or something with me. Like you get that, like, I'm going to go fucking take on the world. And I want that, because
I get that.
Because I didn't have that growing up. And I know that it's easier for me to stay up than try to get back up. So let's polish this off before we go to rapid fire. Honestly, we may even skip rapid fire just because this shit's so dank. This is so good.
Sorry, go ahead, man. I was going to say, if possible, before the end, I'd love to throw a few examples out there, because I know I always learn by real world examples. Because I never want to just give people theory or like frameworks. It's like, who are people actually killing it?
Perfect. Let's go through niching objections, get some examples, and then where people can follow you online, support you in like your guide that's coming out. So
cool, man.
Let's breeze through these objections real quick.
Awesome. Hit me. Have you got some? Yeah,
I got some. So I'll get bored, you know, like niching down's boring.
All right. I get this one all the time. And the thing is, like, what is more boring? Like perpetually feeling like you're pushing a boulder up a hill and you feel really unfocused and you're just trying to grind it out and you feel like you're getting nowhere. To me, that is boring. And I know so many people who threw up this objection. Eventually I convinced them. They niched down and started finding traction, and they had more energy and excitement than I'd ever seen in them before. Because they're like, holy crap, something's finally working. And just because they're constrained by like doing a certain type of work or service, they couldn't care less. They are literally like pumped to actually be seeing some results on their labor. So that would be my my answer. Would
you rather feel bored or constantly defeated?
Yeah, literally, that is kind of what it comes down to. If it's not working and it hasn't worked for years, like try something new and remember it's not a life sentence.
Oh, that's so powerful, dude. Niching down is not a life sentence. I think that should be like around the title for this. I don't want to limit my opportunities.
Okay, so this is another one, right? People think, oh, this niche is going to be too small. Like I'm not going to earn enough from it or whatever. Thing is, I struggle to think of any successful people I know, both in the creative industry and really any industry, that haven't niched and focused in some particular way. All these big people you look up to, if you really audit what they're doing, they will have niched in some way. They will not be a generalist. And so I think there is always ample opportunity. And not just that, but especially in some of the examples we'll get to in a minute, some of these tiny, tiny niches that you would think people couldn't make a buck in, people are killing it. So that is the beauty of like, you know, there's a lot of people in the world. There's a lot of people using the internet. The beauty of what we are doing through the internet, it's insane how much money there is to be made, how much opportunity there is in the most random, bizarre micro niches. And that is so exciting, I think.
Mm-hmm. There's over 7 billion people on this planet. And imagine if you just had 1,000 true following fans, like you can make a creative career that just kills it. So this one, my niche doesn't pay.
Okay, so this one might actually be a viable excuse. First question is like, well, have you just not stuck at it yet? Like, don't just throw that up if you haven't made a killing after 3 months. This stuff takes time. But it might be that you have picked one of the few, small niches where maybe there isn't money. Like my example with the bands, right? There's a ton of clients there, but they literally can't pay you enough. And so I would say if you're experiencing this, go back to that 4-part framework before. and run a few alternate niches down. And you'd be surprised. Often it's like a small pivot or a sidestep, and it's like, okay, now it's kind of clicking financially.
Okay, I'll feel constrained.
Yeah, again, like what do you feel more constrained by? Just getting zero traction or suddenly having stuff work for you? And if you feel constrained, like try niching and you'd be amazed at actually the opportunities that open up. It's like we said before, you make yourself open. You open yourself up to the path of least resistance. And I know so many people who actually started with one niche and then these opportunities came and they kind of pivoted or they added something onto their business and they started doing something 2 years down the line they never could have foreseen. So I would actually say it's the opposite. I would say you get an increase in opportunities that comes.
That's pretty much my story for sure. And also constraints breed creativity, clarity, confidence, and yield those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I love the example my buddy Ian Barnard gives with this. He talks about an hourglass. So you start at the top and it's super wide. You go really narrow and you niche down, and often over time it can broaden out again. So there's a lot of people, like maybe you are looking up to someone and you're like, well, they're killing it. And they're actually not so niche, Tom and Scotty. So what are you talking about? Go back in their backstory. And normally what was the actual moment of them breaking out and getting huge success, they were niched. And then they used their platform of success to diversify, to add various things on because they could.
Gary V with
Right?
like wine library. And
Yeah.
I look at him like that's
the wine guy.
Perfect example.
Yeah, like Marie Forleo, she's getting into all kinds of stuff now, but she broke through writing a dating book, I believe. And that was her whole thing. Before she did all of the ventures she's doing now, she was niched and so was everyone else.
So we are on a time constraint. So let's, first off, let me know real quick, give us a brief overview of what can people expect from your niching guide. And then if you got a couple examples, let's drop those.
So in terms of the guide I'm working on, we've been through quite a bit of it today, but it's just getting this in a much more structured way. And I like to keep it visual. So there's all kinds of exercises you can literally go through and like print it out, fill it out in the PDF.
Like, I'm guessing it's going to be like your Instagram on steroids because you do very visual with actionable steps, but like all within one spot.
Yeah, you can't pack everything into an Instagram post. No. So it's like giving real case studies, real worksheets and stuff that you can actually tick off and go through. So the idea is it's kind of like a free workshop. You literally just work through it and you come out the other side having clarity and a bit of direction.
And where can people find this? When's it get a drop? Putting some pressure on you now.
So because I know when this episode's coming out, it will drop before then. If not, like send me an abusive DM, Scotty. Get it over the line.
Way to let my audience down.
Yeah, I won't do it. So yeah, it's going to be at tomross.co. So tomross.co.
And if you're on the newsletter and you're seeing this episode, I will have it plugged into the something you may be interested in section.
Appreciate it, man.
For sure. Let's do like one or two quick anecdotal case studies, and then where can people go to follow you online and support you?
Sure
and then
thing,
we'll
man.
just have to do a round 3 sometime so we can go deeper.
Sounds good. So you're actually first on my list here. You know, you are the perfect example of someone that's niched down and found tremendous success on the back of it. And it's still early days, but you're seeing like crazy traction. Give it 5-10 years. Like my mind blows when I just think like, you know, where you're going to be. But I think it all kind of comes from more focus, right?
Yeah.
So another one, our mutual friend, Mr. Dustin Lee.
Yeah. Yep.
Like
supply in the house.
He niched by selling digital products, but he niched even further stylistically by selling retro, nothing but. And I've debated with him so many times over the years. He's kind of been on the fence saying, shall I go explore some of the stuff that's popular right now? I don't know if retro is where it's at. He stuck to his guns, all power to him. And it's really, really benefited him because he has carved out an incredible niche business. And that is a great example. If you said to a stranger, I'm selling like digital art products just for designers and it's all really old style and retro, they probably think you're making like $12 a month. Dustin is killing it in business. And so that's a perfect, and the rest, man, like, you know, Dustin is killing it. And that is a incredibly small micro niche, but it's still very, very lucrative. And then we got Zolfa, who's part of my coaching group, the Cosmic Feminist.
Huge fan of her.
this is a great case of someone that was a bit generalized and then she leaned into her niche. So she had this kind of spacey type style to her work. And every few posts, she put out something around feminism. I ended up talking to her and saying, like, what do you really care about? What are you most passionate about? Turns out it was feminism. And so I said, well, you got this ambiguous brand. You're posting about it kind of sporadically. Why don't you fully commit to this niche? She rebranded as the Cosmic Feminist. And now her work is exclusively these powerful feminist messages.
She just, last I saw, she was like over 20K and she don't have like a couple.
She is blowing up. Like literally, she just had a successful launch for her clothing and product line. Her Instagram is one of the fastest growing ones I can see anywhere.
Straight up.
I went a few weeks without looking at it and nearly fell off my chair when I checked out her engagement and her growth stats and sent her a voice note being like, damn, Zolfa, like, remember me when you're famous kind of thing. Like,
we connected
so
through
impressive.
you know, like her and I have connected because of you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she's great though. Like she's going places. So, you know, when I first talked to her, she was kind of floating around feeling a bit unfocused. And guess what? Niching stepped in. It's like a superpower. I believe in it this much. I'm not talking about this for the sake of it, guys. Like anyone listening, like please open yourself up for it because I see this time and time and time again. And you don't need to be like a runaway success. We've got another girl I'm working with, Kat, or lady, should I say, Kat. And she ironically has niched down into illustrating cats. And straight away, she's gone from months. It is like she loves cats. She's gone from months of stagnation on her Instagram, like pretty much zero growth, very, you know, bouncing around and generalized in style. And she is seeing the biggest growth of her entire time on Instagram in a very short space of time since focusing. People start following her because they love cats and they want to see illustrated cats. And, you know, her work's all about cats. And not just that, she knows where to find her people. She's going on cat hashtags and starting chatting with people who love cats every day. And they're gravitating back to her profile. So she's able to market and communicate with focus, with confidence, instead of feeling like, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to speak with.
Man, these are all hella powerful. I think this is probably like the most value-driven episode I've done so far, just because we've niched down on a topic.
You know
what I mean? Like we niched down on this. Like, Tom,
that was tactical, right?
Yeah, dude, like that. Round 3. For those who have follow-up questions, hit us up. And we can plan a round 3 in the future because this is the stuff we love. We love working with creatives like this and helping you like niche down and find your most success. Like this is what we do.
I love it, man. That was fun.
Yeah, dude. Tom, I can't thank you enough for your time. I wish we could keep going, time constraints, but brother, I love you. Thank you so much. I owe so much to you. I'm a walking billboard for what you do for our community. And I can't thank you enough, man, for real. The gratitude I can't even put into words. So I appreciate you taking time to go deep on this today. Just
hit me with some margaritas and a rap battle and a pizza when I see you.
Let's get it. All right, brother. I'll see you at Creative South at least, right?
Yeah. I can't wait for sure.
Okay. Love you. Take care. We'll be in touch. Okay. I'll follow up with you after this call.
Bye, man.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Yes. Peace. Thanks again for listening. It'd be awesome if you took the time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let the comment below so we can connect. Again, if you want to catch a shout out as a future listener of the week, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a rating and review.